Welcome to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Marie, a courage coach, creative soul, and adventure seeker. Since through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail in 2019, I'm on a mission to help you embrace your most confident self so you can achieve your dreams too. If you're eager for deep conversations, big questions, and meaningful connections, join me on the quest to discovering how we can create a more magical and memorable life. Hello, nerds. How are you? I'm good. Today, we are talking about how to locate your deepest truth. When I talk about your deepest truth, I mean, what's the next step to take in your life to get closer and closer to what's true for you, what's in full alignment with the person that you are and the person that you are meant to become. Now, before we jump in, I want you to expect some resistance because a big part of you, your ego, does not want you to see the truth. Why? Because truth is going to ask a lot of you. It's going to ask you to take scary action and go towards what's unfamiliar. Whereas the ego just wants to keep you safe. The ego loves the familiar. The ego doesn't mind about being miserable if it's comfortable. The last thing your ego wants is for you to go on an adventure and find fulfillment, because adventure comes with risk. So, let it have a little freak out during this episode. Kind of like a toddler on the side, focus on what I'm telling you. Try to locate your deepest truth. And we're going to come back at the end of the episode to talk about how to deal with that inner freak out, why it's there and what you can do about it. But first, we're going to look at 3 places where you can locate your truth. Then I'm going to give you an exercise that you can do. And then we're going to come back to this inner freak out, to your ego who does not want you to listen. But first, let's start by lifting 3 different rocks underneath which you can start looking for your truth. The first one is physical symptoms and physical pain. Now, I'm not someone who's going to tell you that everything you experience physically is psychosomatic, okay? Take your symptoms seriously. If you have migraines, backache, stomach issues, take your symptoms seriously and also get curious about what your body might be telling you. This is not as esoteric as it sounds. I mean, in Western culture, we have separated physical health from mental health, but they're so much more connected that we think they are. Just as a small example, I started noticing that sometimes I feel tension in my throat, and whenever I feel this way, kind of like someone is squeezing my throat, whenever I feel this way, I have to ask myself, what is it that I want to say right now that I'm not saying? And there's always something. I always feel this way when I'm limiting my self-expression. And it shows up physically for me. The first way that I know that I'm keeping something inside is because I feel this tension in my throat. Another example is that I thought I might have PMDD, so premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is an intense form of PMS. I talked about that in a recent episode about mental health, because in the last year or so, I've been having very intense symptoms when I am PMSing. And what's interesting now, it hasn't been long enough for me to be able to say for sure, but since I have decided to leave my relationship, I've had 2 instances of PMS, and they have been much more gentle. And so I think that's one way that my body was trying to ring the alarm and get me to pay attention, since I was not listening to the inner voice. And notice if that happens for you as well. If you ignored that inner voice, your deeper self is going to find different ways to get to you, to get your attention. And once it has your attention, once you start listening, then it doesn't need to ring the alarm anymore. Now, again, I'm not saying that this is always the case. I'm just saying that I don't want you to ignore or underestimate what might be going on for you underneath. And you lose nothing asking yourself the question, or actually asking your body the question, what are you trying to tell me? I'm listening. And to hang out in that question. You might not have an answer right away, but to ask yourself, what could this be about? Just get curious. Now, the second rock I want to lift is to look underneath your distractions or numbing habits. Now, to make a link with what I was just telling you about, when I was looking into PMDD and hormone imbalances and trying to figure out what was going on for me, I was focused on treating my body and its symptoms instead of looking at the source. And that was a form of distraction. That was keeping me busy. Busy is a synonym of distraction, and away from the truth. Also, needing to watch more TV to get away from the anxious thoughts coming up to the surface. It's not about what you do. Like, it's not watching TV that's the issue. It's the energy behind the action. So whether it's watching TV, drinking a lot of wine, working overtime, it's not about what you do, but how you show up to the activity. So I know, let's say at the end of a work day, if I'm drinking a glass of wine just to celebrate and unwind, or if I'm drinking a glass of wine because I'm trying to get away from myself, because I am ashamed about something that happened during that day. I've gotten to know myself, and I can tell that the energy is different. Same thing when I'm watching a series from a place of, joy and desire versus when I'm watching a series because I cannot stand to sit still. Like I was telling you in the beginning, we know deep down inside the truth about what's the best next thing for us to do, but we don't want to know because knowing is scary. And so we drown out that knowing in all kinds of different ways. We numb the knowing so that we can stay comfortable. It's our ego orchestrating that, distracting us. And we want to outsmart the ego. That's why I'm recording this episode, so that you can see more clearly what's going on within you. Another example that I can give you, actually I've got two. The first one is I noticed that I would go to bed late and then in the morning wake up groggy and not eat breakfast, just have coffee. Kind of like a fuck it attitude. And that can happen when you're ignoring the truth, because when this inner voice speaks to you and you repress it, you push it down, it's kind of like telling a part of you that you don't care. What you have to say does not matter. Imagine if someone else was telling you that. If someone else was telling you, what you're saying doesn't make sense. I don't want to hear it. What you're saying doesn't matter. That's a toxic relationship. But you're creating a toxic relationship with a part of you. And what happens when you're in a relationship like this, whether it be with yourself or with someone else, is you might start believing that voice. You might start believing the voice that says you don't matter. And what happens when you start believing that is it shows in your behaviors. If I don't matter, then why the hell should I go to bed early and eat breakfast and shower? Notice how you talk to yourself, and this might be really subtle, but what do you tell yourself when you can sense this inner truth come up? And now imagine if you were looking at a friend that you really love and they were told by another person, they were told these things. How would you react? So let's say that friend was told by their partner, shh, no, don't say that. Don't say that. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter. How would you react to witnessing this interaction? what would you say? You'd probably say something like, hey, what are you saying? What are you saying to my friend? This is not acceptable. And then you might turn to your friend and say, don't listen to them. They don't have your best at heart. You are allowed to feel however you feel and to say whatever you want to say. You matter, and what you're experiencing is valid. Now, this is what you need to tell yourself. Okay? Now, one last example. One other way that we distract ourselves from our deepest truth is to focus on the positive. You might have an inner whisper that tells you it's time to leave your job. And then you go, no, let's focus on what's good. Like it's a good pay, you have good colleagues. And I'm not saying that this doesn't matter. You do have to focus on the positive, but not at the expense of listening to your truth. If you have to work double time at convincing yourself that you want what you have, I think I was telling you that in one of the recent episodes, might be a red flag. If you're like, I kind of want to leave my partner, I think, but you jump straight into, but I can't do this because they're a good partner, they're a good parent, they have this going on for them, like everyone loves them at their job. It seems noble what you're doing, but it's distracting you from what's real deep inside. Think about the water in a river or a lake, and when you're standing outside looking in, sometimes you can see clearly at the bottom the rocks, but then if you step inside the water and you start shaking your feet, then you cannot see through the water anymore. It's the same thing. If you're trying not to see clearly what's at the bottom, you're just going to shift your feet. That's what distractions are. Just trying to keep the water moving so that the water doesn't settle and you don't have to see what's at the bottom. Now, the third rock I want to lift and look under is your jealousies and your judgments. The people who irritate you the most are teachers, and they're showing you what you might not be allowing yourself. I'm going to give you personal examples again. I remember distinctly two moments. A moment where a peer of mine was telling us about the kind of deep love that they were looking for. And I was judging them. I was thinking, they have such romantic ideals about relationships. I remember also a moment in a party when I was talking with someone and they were also describing the kind of person they wanted to be with. And I noticed myself being cynical and contemptuous. I might have said something like, don't you think that's a lot to want in a person? And looking back, it's pretty obvious to me that I was reacting this way because I didn't give myself the permission to look for a relationship in which my needs and my desires are met in the way that I want them to. And so because they were allowing themselves, I was angry at them, but it was only a projection. So the people who irritate you, who make you angry, the people that you are jealous of, it's never about them. It's never about them, honey. It's about you. So turn it around to you. If you're angry with your boss about something that they're doing, ask yourself, what does that tell me about me and what I need? And what I need to allow myself, and what kind of permission do I need to give myself? This is going to be so much more helpful to you, these kinds of questions, than to go on complaining about these people and calling up a friend to bitch about so-and-so. Yes, it's good to have a good rant sometimes, but you also have to be able to turn it around and say, what's going on, honey? What's hiding underneath this bitchiness? With love. Just curiosity, compassion, love. Okay, so these were the 3 places where you can start locating your deep truth. Underneath your physical pain, underneath your distractions or numbing habits, and underneath your jealousies and judgments. Now, I have an exercise for you that I decided to call the disruption playground. Let me explain where this came from. So when I was in the phase where I was thinking about my decision of whether or not to leave my relationship, all of the spaces where I could explore this question, like with coaches, with therapists, sometimes with friends, I felt like what we were focused on was upholding the status quo. So for example, with my therapist, I would bring up my doubts and she would help me rationalize my feelings and focus on the positives. Now, in the moment, it made me feel better because I didn't have to make a scary move. But my doubts always kept coming back. And at one point, I was craving a space where I could explore what it would be like to actually disrupt the status quo. I was craving a space where I could walk through what it would look like to leave. Okay, well, if I left, here's how I would feel. Here's what I would do. Here's how I would handle all of this. Just as a way to explore the possibilities and see that, maybe this path isn't that bad. Maybe it's more doable than I think. But the conversations with the people around me that were helping me think through this decision were not going there naturally. Until I decided intentionally to make that happen, and I went to see a friend and I created that for myself. And I want you to also create that for yourself, whether it be with someone else, but it can also be in your journal, to just explore that other reality, and not in a panicked sort of way, but in a having your own back. Let's say I trust that it's going to be okay. What could that other path look like? Because right now, what's probably happening is that you spend most of your time trying to strengthen the argument for why you should stay where you are, listing the reasons to stay and the reasons why you can't leave. And then the other 2%, if you're lucky to have even that 2%, is spent considering the other option. But I want you to make that 50-50, where you can also play around with this other life that you might create. I do this with my clients all the time, and it's amazing what happens because they have a space where they can disrupt the status quo without any judgment. Because what happens, let's say you are thinking, I could move to a different country. I've always dreamt of that. If you tell your partner about this, they might react like, oh, wait, but do we have the money for this? What about my job? And so it stops the exploration. Same thing if you talk about this with your best friend might be like, oh, but you mean you would be away from me? And so it leaves you with very few spaces to really explore what's possible for you. That's why it's such valuable work that I do with my clients. And sometimes, I see them opening up like a flower, like blooming, and their eyes widen and they have stars in their eyes because they've never had the chance to explore these desires without meeting their own obstacles or other people's obstacles. It's a neutral space where, I don't mind what they do with their lives. I just want what's best for them. And what they choose to do doesn't have any impact on my life. And so it gives them so much freedom to explore. And that doesn't mean they're going to take action. That doesn't mean this person is going to move to France. That doesn't mean this person is going to leave their partner. But at least they're exploring all the options without limits. And so that brings so much clarity because when you hear yourself talk, you're going to know, okay, yeah, this feels right. This feels in alignment. This is expansive. It makes it easier for me to breathe. And that gives you a hint that might be closer to your truth. But you can't get that embodiment if you never have spaces to explore fully, to go down the path for real. Okay, well, if I leave my partner, then this could happen, and then I could do this, and then I could move there, and that's how it would work. This is going to give you confidence instead of staying in the panic loop. And if you want, we can do this together, this disruption playground. You can book a free discovery call with me, and I'm going to ask you those questions, and we're going to get curious about what that could look like for you. So if you want to do that together, go to selfgrowthnerds.com/coaching, and you can book a 45 minutes call there. Again, it's free, and you're going to leave with so much clarity. And then if you want to, we can work together for me to support you in this transition, because, and that's what I'm going to end with, because your ego is not going to want to go down that path. Once you identify the truth, the ego is going to say, no, this is dangerous. And that's why many people spend their lives feeling miserable, because they never learn how to outsmart their ego, how to consciously drive their life, how to handle the inner freak out that I was telling you at the beginning. And so that's what I do with my clients. That's what we work on. Make sure that they're the leader of their own life so that they don't let the inner freak out take over, which is what keeps most people in jobs they don't like, in partnerships in which there's no love for decades, is whenever they consider leaving, the freak out is overwhelming and the uncertainty takes over. Now, I want you to be able to step in and choose consciously what you want for your one precious and epic life. And for that, you need to develop radical self-trust. That's what allowed me to make the move, because I have developed strong trust in myself. I know I'm going to be fine. Now, what might be going on for you, and I want to offer a few different reframes, is one, you might think that if you leave the job or the partner that you have, you won't find something else, or you will, but it will be worse, or it won't be as good, and you will regret it. Now, this way of thinking is a disempowered way of thinking. Like, life happens to me. I left my job and I didn't find a better one. And I want to help you take full responsibility and say, you know what? I'm going to leave that job, but I'm going to make it my number one mission to find something that I love so much more. One of my parents' friends was telling me about how she changed careers in the middle of her life and she had to go back to school. And I asked her, how did you know that you were going to like this career better? And she said to me, I had no idea. I just decided I'm going to make the most of it. Whatever happens, I'm going to figure it out. I am someone who figures it out. What might also be going on for you is that you doubt the way you see the situation. You make yourself wrong for thinking or feeling the way that you think or feel. For example, you might think, I feel like this is not right. This is not the place for me to be. But, I might not have good judgment. Or I want to be with someone who's more curious about me, but I'm probably asking for too much. See how you state what you want and then you right away make yourself wrong for thinking or feeling this way. Now, I want you to try considering for just a moment that you might know exactly what you need for yourself. That you are the number one expert of your own journey and your judgment is 100% on point. Just try considering that. What kind of life might you create if you trusted yourself completely? Yes, you might make more mistakes, but mistakes are not a bad thing. They teach you about yourself. They teach you about what works, what doesn't work. Mistakes mean that you're in movement. You're no longer stagnating. They're a good thing. Whenever I ask my clients, what would you do if you trusted yourself completely? They almost download an exact step by step of what should be next in their life. And it's so smart and it's so clear. And then they tell me, oh, but maybe so-and-so knows better. What do you think? What would you do? And I'm like, honey, again, honey is my favorite word. Honey, you're so smart and you're so clear and you got this. We have been socialized to distrust ourselves because when we were kids, like everyone told us no, that you don't feel this way. I was reading a book and there was an example of a kid who's like 5 years old and they tell their parents like, I hate grandma, I want to kill grandma. And the parents say, no, you don't. You don't hate grandma. You don't want to kill her. Don't say things like that. And that's just denying how the kid feels and saying, I know how you feel better than you do, instead of, asking the kid like, oh, what happened? Like, did grandma disappoint you? And exploring their feelings, you're telling them, no, I know better. That's what happened for most of us, adults around us telling us how to feel. And so how to think and how to feel. And so we just follow their instructions and get disconnected from ourselves. And now as adults, if we want to live intentionally and consciously, we've got to learn how to trust ourselves again, give ourselves that permission. When it comes to my business, for example, I could just listen to what all the business coaches are saying, but then I wouldn't figure out what my way is. When I do things my way, you know what happens? Sometimes I make mistakes and I lose money. That's happened many times. But I also discover what's right for me. And sometimes I make a decision that no one told me to do. And I get rewarded for that decision. I've also made a lot of money doing things my own way. But you have to open yourself up to both. When you say I trust myself completely, you're going to make mistakes, but you're also going to make really good calls. And you're going to be so proud because what comes out of this is going to have come from you and only you, your genius. And that, my friends, is so empowering. So that's it for this week. I, again, want to invite you to book a call with me because I want to work with you to help you trust yourself. Trust in the fact that you know what to do and that you're going to figure it out, even though it's scary AF. Let's say you want to leave your job, but you're worried because your job has really good benefits and a pension, or you want to leave your partner, but you're also worried because they have a better paying job and it would be advantageous for you to be with them if you want to buy a house, for example. I want you to be the kind of person that's like, none of this shit matters because I follow what's true for me. I figure it out. I'm good at making money, and I make things work how I want them to work, and I surround myself with the right people. Not from a place of scarcity, like, oh, I need to stay here because I need what they have to offer me. No, from a place of abundance of like, I am strong, I am resourced, I know what I'm doing, and I go after it. This is what I do with my clients. So if you want to become that kind of person, reconnect with your truth, with your inner power, book a discovery call, come and check out if we're a good fit. It's selfgrowthnerds.com/coaching. These are 45-minute calls in which we're going to talk about where you are, where you want to be, what's going on. I'm going to tell you about what it's like working together. I'm going to tell you if I think you're a good fit, if I can help you. If I can't, I'm going to refer you to someone else. And that's it. Super simple. You have nothing to lose. And I cannot wait to meet you and chat about what could be possible for you if you trust yourself completely. Okay, have a beautiful week, everyone, and I will talk to you next week. Bye! Hey! If you love what you're hearing on the Self-Growth Nerds podcast and you want individual help finding a new direction for your life and developing the courage to make your dreams a reality, you have to check out how we can work together on selfgrowthnerds.com or message me on Instagram at selfgrowthnerds. My clients say they would have needed that support years ago. So if you're tired of feeling like you're wasting your life, don't wait. Get in touch now, and I cannot wait to meet you.